You know, some cars are just, well, they're just cars. They get you from point A to point B. But every now and then, a car comes along that's so much more. It's a statement. And today, we are going to dissect an absolute icon, the Mercedes-Benz W124. This isn't just about admiring a classic car. We're diving deep into an era of engineering where perfection came first and cost came second. It's why so many people call this the last real Mercedes.
Let's just kick things off with a quote from the Turkish auto channel Automobile Rodum, because I think it says everything you need to know. They said, "Even the wiper on this car impresses you when it's working." Just think about that for a second. When the windscreen wiper is a work of art, you know you're dealing with something on a completely different level. It's a sign that every single part of this car has a story.
All right, so here's our plan. First, we're going to re-examine what makes this car a legend. Then, we'll get into its incredible aerodynamics, how it was literally designed by the wind. Of course, we have to talk about that genius wiper. Then we'll cover the legendary Porsche connection with the 500e. And we'll wrap it all up by looking at the timeless comfort that really defines this car.
So, to really get the W124, you have to understand the car it replaced. It came out in the mid-80s to take over from the W123, which was famous for being practically indestructible. So this thing had some seriously big shoes to fill.
The mission was huge. Create a car for the future, something safer, way more aerodynamic, and modern, but without losing an ounce of that legendary Mercedes quality. The car's life spanned a whole decade of changes. It kicked off in '84, got some big engine updates in '87, and then in 1990, it got those iconic side panels, the Pico, from the mind of the great Bruno Sacco. Then, the name we all know now, the E-Class, officially arrived in '93. Production finally stopped in 1995, but not before they built an incredible 2.7 million of them.
Okay, let's get into one of the W124's most incredible features, something that put it just light years ahead of everything else on the road at the time. And that was its relationship with the air. This wasn't just about making it look good. This was pure science.
Which really brings us to the big question, right? You look at this car, it's got these strong, kind of boxy architectural lines. You don't immediately think slippery. So how on earth did the engineers pull off something that's still impressive today?
Well, the answer is this number, a drag coefficient of just 0.28. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that is a figure that a lot of sleek, modern sedans today struggle to beat. A lower number means less air fighting against the car, which means better fuel economy, less wind noise, and more stability when you're going fast. For a car from the mid-1980s, 0.28 wasn't just good, it was basically witchcraft.
All right, so if you want a single part, just one, that perfectly captures the whole cost is no object philosophy of the W124, you don't have to look any further than the windscreen wiper. Seriously, it's the perfect example of what we lovingly call overengineering. It was called the eccentric sweep wiper. And instead of just putting two boring old arms on there like everyone else, Mercedes designed this incredibly complex single-arm system. It didn't just pivot back and forth. No. As it swept across the glass, it would actually extend outwards, pushing the blade right into the corners of the windshield. And the result of all that engineering? Well, it speaks for itself. The W124's single wiper cleaned an amazing 86% of the windscreen. Compare that to your typical dual wiper system, which got you maybe 75% coverage. That extra 11% is a huge deal for your visibility when you're driving in a storm. It was all about making the car safer.
What's just so fascinating to me is the contrast here. On the left, you see the simple, elegant little control stalk. Easy. On the right, that's the mechanical reality of what's making it work. All of that incredibly complex engineering, hidden away just to do a simple job. Perfectly. That right there was the W124 way.
The W124's engineering story, it really hits its absolute peak with one specific model, the 500e. This thing was a high-performance monster, so ambitious that Mercedes, the giant of German engineering, had to call in a favor from their famous neighbors over at Porsche.
So why the team up? Well, it came down to two major problems. First, Mercedes' best engineers were all tied up working on the new S-Class. But the bigger issue was physical. The wider body of the 500e needed to cram that huge V8 engine in, literally didn't fit down the regular W124 assembly line. So Porsche stepped in, re-engineered the chassis, and took on the incredibly complex job of assembling them by hand. And the process to build one of these was, well, It was kind of crazy. It was like this incredible dance between two factories. Each 500e took a full 18 days to build. The parts would go to Porsche for hand assembly, then get trucked back to Mercedes for painting, then sent back to Porsche to have the engine dropped in, and then returned one final time to Mercedes for inspection. This wasn't mass production, this was bespoke craftsmanship.
So what did all that insane effort get you? It got you a monster. The press called it a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they were right. Just look at the numbers. Compared to a regular 230e, the 500e had more than double the power from that massive 5-liter V8. It could do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just over 6 seconds. For a 4-door sedan back then, that was supercar speed.
But look, raw performance was only one side of the W14 story. For millions of people who own these, the car's real genius was in its incredible ride, how quiet it was inside, and just this feeling of absolute, unbreakable solidity that's so hard to find in a car today.
You know, that same Turkish review channel summed up that feeling of quality perfectly. When they closed the door, they just said, "This sound is therapy." And that's it. It's not a flimsy click. It's a deep, solid, satisfying thunk that tells you everything about the quality of the steel and the precision of how it was all put together.
And this is where the W124's philosophy is so different from today's premium cars. Right now, luxury is often about how many screens you have, how many apps you can connect to. But the W124's luxury was purely mechanical. It was all about isolating you from the bumps in the road, giving you total stability, and creating a cabin so quiet you could think.
And that amazing comfort wasn't an accident, you know. It was the direct result of brilliant engineering. Things like a revolutionary multi-link rear suspension, tons of sound insulation everywhere, and materials that were chosen to last forever, not just to look flashy. This was a car that was purpose-built to cruise on the Autobahn all day long without breaking a sweat or tiring you out.
So as we start to wrap this up, let's pull all these pieces together. What's the final verdict on this engineering legend? What we've seen is that the W124 was so much more than a car. It was a declaration. It was a statement that pure engineering excellence mattered more than anything else. From the body shaped in a wind tunnel, to that crazy single wiper, to the legendary Porsche-built 500e, every single part was thought about, obsessed over, and, in many cases, perfected. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. When you look back at its design, the quality of its build, and the fact that so many are still on the road today, you just have to ask, was this it? Was the W124 the absolute high point? Was this the greatest example of what can happen when you tell engineers to build the best car in the world, no matter what it costs? I'll let you be the judge.